This weekend we have the first edition of the CJI, the Craig Jones Invitational. $1 million prize money for the under 80 kilo division and $1 million prize money for the over 80 kilo division, as well as some interesting and fun super fights going on. So I thought I'd do a quick breakdown of each division and hopefully share some of my, let's say, experience and insights, having competed at ADCC myself before and against a few of the competitors as well. So just before we get into the breakdown for each division, one thing that I find very interesting is how the matchups are going to actually fit into the context of the rules. So the stage is going to be very different. It's set in the pit style alley. We've seen a few jiu-jitsu matches at Karate Combat and some other promotions before in this pit style slanted wall type mat space. The only thing is we haven't seen high level competitors really go against each other in this kind of format. So I think it'll be very interesting. You see some people have been practicing recently at training, but to be honest, a lot of the training sessions I see, they've only been doing it for the last week or two, so I don't know how developed some of the strategies will be. The other thing that's very interesting that I think is overlooked is actually the rules themselves. So what are the judges looking for? It's 3 5-minute rounds and they're scored MMA style, so 10-9 or maybe 10-8. So I'm actually very curious to see, will there be any controversial decisions? Obviously you want to avoid those with the stakes so high. You're not just competing for a plastic medal anymore, you're competing for real life-changing money. So I'm curious to see how the judges' decisions play into it. Will different judges favour different things? How strict will the organisers have been with the judges? And how standardised will everything be? So from what I've seen, the way that this judging is going to be is the most highly, let's say, valued skill or progression in the match is going to be who's initiating the exchanges. Okay, so probably who's the most aggressive, who's controlling the pace, who is in the offensive mode and who's in the defensive mode. So even if I'm on bottom and I'm constantly attacking, making you defend, if the position isn't changing, surely I'm winning in that sense. Same way on top, if I'm making you retain your guard and I'm the one who's dictating the pace, it seems like that'll be the most valuable thing for me. The second most valued then is close submission attempts. So again, am I making you do real submission defenses? Am I putting you under pressure? Am I making you be very careful in avoiding the different submissions? And then the last one below that is positional control. So I'm actually curious, like if you look at something like IBJJF, it seems like it's nearly the opposite way around. Positional control is the most important. You can just pass the guard, hold on, chill and stall for the rest of the match, and you're going to win on your points. The opposite way, if you're very aggressive, constantly moving, you actually get no score, maybe an advantage here or there. But I think it'll be interesting to see how those rules play into the matches. And you have to keep that in mind, that the competitors might be using slightly different styles based on those rules as well. Hopefully we don't run into any scenarios that we've seen at some other higher level tournaments where people end up flopping onto bad submission attempts, giving up positions, different things like this, dropping back on very weak footlocks and making a grimacing face, hoping that you get the advantage points for attempting a submission, all the while actually giving your opponent a good position. So I hope we don't run into any of those problems, but judging by the rules, it seems like possibly we could. Okay, so hopefully the judges are kind of briefed consistently and properly on that. But keeping all those rules and the venue and stuff in mind, we'll get into some of the matches, starting with the under 80 kilo division. So kicking off the under 80 kilo division, the first matchup, Ruotolo against Jason Nolf. One of the most interesting matchups in the first round, mainly because people are a bit unsure how Jason Nolf's wrestling will translate over to a more jiu-jitsu style event. So Jason Nolf, obviously 3-time NCAA Division 1 national champion, and the one year he didn't win it, he came second place. So obviously one of the best American wrestlers, let's say, in the last 10 years. Recently has big wins over Jordan Burroughs, and he just narrowly missed out on a place in the Olympics, losing against Kyle Dake. So he'll be one of the best wrestlers in the competition, if not the best. The only issue is he's going up against Ruotolo, okay, who probably, if I had to put my money on it, would be my favourite to win the whole division. Okay, we've seen Ty have a very consistent style against many different opponents, many different weight classes, very aggressive, which suits the rules, good wrestling, always active, and don't forget, it's 3 5-minute rounds. So Ty is just not going to get tired in this format at all. Okay, I actually have experience competing against him myself maybe about 4 years ago after ADCC, competed against Tai, and I thought, okay, obviously he did very well at that ADCC, got to the semi-final, but I thought, oh, hopefully I'll just go leg lock him. And maybe my conditioning wasn't the best, but I feel like I had a good performance, and he still was able to put me under so much pressure. It's the longest 15 minutes of my life, I'd say. Just on a small tangent, one of my friends was cornering me for that event, just one of my Irish friends who's a brown belt, and all I said to him before was, look, all I want from you in the corner is if I look at you, it means tell me what time it is. I'm not going to look at you for any other reason. If I make eye contact with you, just tell me the time, and if I need a bit of a boost, if I need to be more aggressive or something, just shout at me. So halfway through the match then, I'm absolutely wrecked on bottom, starting to get tired. Tai is just picking up the pace, and I'm staring over at my corner man, and all he's saying is, go Tom, go Tom. And in my head, I was just dying to ask him and shout at him like how long is left, because I had no clue if the match had been on 4 minutes, 10 minutes. But it was actually probably one of the most fun matches I've ever had. But feeling that level from Tai, since then I've always thought this guy's going to be future pound for pound number one, basically. Okay, so I think the biggest thing to look out for in this match is going to be Jason Nolf and how his stance for wrestling translates to the match. So he's obviously going to have a wrestling advantage against Tai, but the problem is Tai is a master in the scrambles. So at both getting on the Darce choke, as everyone knows, but also entering into legs. You saw him compete against even someone like Craig Jones. He actually put some close leg attacks against Craig, who's master of the leg attacks himself. Very good knee bars from the scramble, Victor roll type entries. And obviously everyone knows the famous match he had against Paulo Miao in ADCC, where he had Paulo in a disgusting knee bar, again from one of those kind of scrambles. So probably the most interesting areas of the match that I'm looking forward to see is when Nolf gets in close to takedowns, if he does, which I assume he will, how will Tai deal with those scrambles, and will he try attack the neck more for the Darce, or will he try attack the legs more? And I think eventually, if not in the first round, probably the second round, Tai will get on a Darce, or if I had to put my money on it, I would say get on a knee bar, a rolling style entry, countering the takedowns. So I think that's definitely something to look forward to in this match. Up next then, in the second match of the under 80 kilo division, we have Roberto Jimenez against Levi Jones-Leary. Another really interesting matchup that we haven't really seen either guy face an opponent like this. So both experts in Barambolos, but they go about it very differently. So Levi likes to play on his back, very aggressive leg entanglements. The only problem is with the rules, pulling guard is allowed, but you have to try sit up to be more aggressive until you get a grip. Pull guard, move towards the person, try and make a grip, and then go onto your back. So I think this is probably one area where I hope Levi has a good strategy to counterbalance this, because he won't be able to just lie on his back, as we've seen him do at Polaris, where the person on top has to engage and give him a chance. Okay, Roberto Jimenez then, his big weakness has been his leg locks. Outside of that, he's looked one of the best in the world consistently for many years. So I'm curious to see, not so much in the first round, but if he makes it through the second round, how will his leg lock defense go against some of the better leg lockers in the division? If he's ready for the leg attacks against some of the more experienced people, I could actually see him winning the whole division. Okay, but this first match is still very difficult for him, especially with the 3 5-minute rounds. I feel like Levi won't get worn out as much as maybe we've seen him in the past. He's had some matches against Ruotolo, for example, in the gi, where Tai maybe after 8-9 minutes is able to wear him out and use that pressure style passing. But I think in the 3 5-minute rounds, it actually suits Levi to try and stay aggressive, and if he can constantly keep Roberto on the defense, that's what's going to help him. If he can get his K-guard and his different leg entries working, I'm curious to see how the back take battle will go. The only thing I think that suits Roberto is we've seen he's very good at using the likes of the double underpass. So if Levi's trying to play on his back, look for Roberto to have some good success stacking, getting the double unders. And I think over time we might see in the second or third round, if he can get on the back, that's going to be the interesting battle, I think. Levi probably will have a bit more work to do to get onto the back. Roberto's going to try and keep the pace high, stack pass, and look to get on the back himself as well. And he's proven to be a very high percentage finisher once he's on the back. Okay, he's also one of the bigger people in the division, recently winning Nogi World's Absolute Division. So I think he's probably one of the biggest dark horses for the division. But very interesting first match. 2 Berimbolo experts, but going about it in a different way, battling to see who can get on the back in the time they have. Next up, we have Lucas Hulk Barbosa against Kenta Iwamoto. So this is another very interesting match. Not a lot of people giving Kenta hope in this one. I actually think this is a much more even match than a lot of people have been saying. So we've still haven't really seen how Hulk's level or how his game will translate to this lower weight class. The only thing is, he does have experience making the weight and he still look good in MMA. And the weigh-ins are like a full 36 hours before the matches even begin. So he could have ballooned up to 85 kilos by this point. But Kenta is no small person himself. He'll be a bit shorter, maybe a bit slimmer than Hulk. But I think if he can stay as technical as possible, he'll give himself a much better chance. So Hulk obviously has a lot of experience, a lot of strength. He's training with a lot of high-level training partners for this. He's used to, let's say, juicy people putting a lot of strength and pressure onto him. So he's very good at dealing with the wrestling and those kind of areas where the match will take place. I think Kenta is a lot more technical than people think. So you even saw him put JT at the last ADCC under a lot of pressure in the wrestling exchanges. And just over time, JT's experience and his hustle, let's say, wore Kenta down a little bit. He was able to score near the end of the match. So I think for Kenta to have some success, he's going to have to use his stockiness a little bit against Hulk. Try and defend the takedowns for the first maybe round or two, and if he can maybe steal the second round and then turn up the pace in the last round, I think he can have some good success against Hulk. Okay, the only thing is as well, I think the 3 5-minute rounds suits Hulk more than probably anyone in the whole division. So we've seen him get worn out against Bodoni. I think he won't get worn out as much in this tournament. The guys will be smaller. He'll get a minute break in between each round. So definitely very interesting first match. Probably one of the less exciting first matches if I was to put my money on it. But unexpected. So you kind of get your excitement in a different way. I'm definitely curious to see how Hulk will do in this first match. And I think if he can win this and look good, he'll probably be people's favourite or thereabouts to win the division. Okay, but don't count Kenta out. I think he's probably has a technical advantage in the wrestling. Next up, we have Andy Varela against Jozef Chen. So this is actually a rematch of a recent match they had in a completely different rule set. So I'm not sure how much that rule set will translate over to the CJI. Andy Varela, again, someone who's very explosive, very unorthodox. He has a bit of a reputation for being quite rough, which he can be sometimes, but I think it's a bit overblown. I think he's very creative, and that can kind of keep people on the defensive. And again, when you take a look at the criteria and the rules, pushing the pace seems to be the number one most valued thing in the rule set. So again, this is a tournament that suits Andy Varela. He's used to surprising a lot of people. He's very tough. His cardio is very good. He's probably one of the dark horses for the whole tournament as well. But he has Jozef Chen in the first round, who's proven to be a tricky matchup against him. Jozef is someone who's great fundamentals, great pressure, and it seems like the way he trains, he doesn't overly emphasize winning in the training. So when I see him in the training, if he has an issue with, let's say he gets ankle locked around, or he gets swept, or he gets something, he goes straight back into that position and tries to feel it out. It's a brilliant way to train. Instead of just trying to get good at avoiding the areas you're bad at, he seems to try and go through it, and he's obviously learning and improving at a crazy rate, as we've seen some of his big wins recently. So I think a lot of this, again, will come down to the wrestling and who's good at putting the forward pressure. It seems like Jozef has put a good bit of thought into using the slanted wall as well. I've seen some videos of him being very creative using it. So I'm not sure how that will translate. But I think look for Jozef to move forward. He has good clinch style wrestling. Andy Varela is more move, collar ties, and blast doubles. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see who can actually get on top, because I think it'll be much more even than people expect until someone can get on top. But look for Jozef within the 3 rounds, I think, to find a way to get on top and be able to work from there. He's also confident in his guard. We've seen him sweep Andy Varela recently using the butterfly double under control. The only thing is, again, it's going to be tricky to get there. So Another interesting matchup. It's a hard one to call, but I think the main battles to look out for are how will Andy's movement and blast double style match up against Jozef's clinch wrestling and a bit more technical style go down. If Jozef can get on top, I think we'll see some nice passing back take opportunities, but don't count Andy out. One scramble, he can go from 0 to 100 and get on your back. So very interesting matchup here as well. After that, we have another crazy matchup, Kade Ruotolo against Matheus Diniz. This is the matchup I'm most curious for personally from the first round. Matheus, previous ADCC winning champion. He hasn't looked the best since, but he's had some good matches with some other good competitors. He gave Gordon quite a good match, 20 minutes long. He didn't get a ton of offense going, but he was able to make the match a tough one for Gordon. His escapes look good, his fitness, his strength looks very good. So I'm curious to see how his game will translate to being at the lower weight class. Will he be able to keep up with the speed of some of the people in that division? Obviously, he's going straight in the deep end against someone who's the other favourite, in my opinion, Kade Ruotolo. Kade has looked excellent recently. He looks like he's bigger, stronger, faster, more aggressive than ever. And if this rule set is going to suit anyone in the division, next to maybe Andy Varela actually, I think it'll suit Kade. You see he's very aggressive from bottom, from top, always hunting submissions, always pushing the pace. And he's someone who's very hard to control. And it seems like that number one criteria they're looking for, it's almost like controlling the pace and putting the person in defense mode and you can be attacking. That's something that Kade is so good at. And again, 3 5-minute rounds, he's just not going to get tired. Matheus is a very tricky matchup for him though, because we've seen if Kade struggles to get on top, which he might against Matheus, he's probably going to be reluctant to pull guard. So I'm curious to see how Kade will handle the wrestling against someone who's very strong and robust like Matheus. If Matheus can get on top, I think he'll be looking at maybe avoiding some of the action, not necessarily stalling, but definitely being safe and trying to control Kade while he's on the bottom, because the last thing you want is Kade to turn it into a scramble, get back up, and start to put pressure on you again. So again, I think we'll know a lot in the first 2 minutes of how this match is actually going to play out. If Kade can use his movements to start to tire Matheus, put him under pressure. The first round will probably be a bit cagey, but I think the second and third especially, you'll see a lot more exchange in positions and we'll see a lot of exciting movements from Kade. Coming up straight after that match then, we have another rematch, Renato Canuto against Tommy Langaker. And Tommy Langaker is probably the person in the whole tournament who's been the most overlooked. When I saw the betting lines on some of the random betting sites that they have now, Tommy was actually probably the best value for money in terms of a bet. Other people were a bit overhyped, some people were underhyped, and I definitely think Tommy was the most underhyped. He's the perfect weight, perfect size for the division. He looks to be in great form. Some of the wins he has the last few years, he's beaten some of the best people in the world and he's looked very, I wouldn't say comfortable, but he's looked very consistent and very solid in those wins. Recent Nogi world champion, he's won ADCC trials back-to-back in probably the hardest division out of any of the trials. So he's going to be on great form, looking to put on a good performance here. He's actually recently, this is also a rematch from about 1 or 2 years ago at one championship, where Tommy was actually able to get on Renato's back and he didn't get the finish, but he was able to win a clear decision and it was another very good performance. Renato is someone, again, like Andy Varela, very dynamic, good leg locks, good scrambles, good wrestling and good cardio. You saw at the last ADCC, he went up against Nicky Ryan. Nicky was probably one of the favourites for the division in many people's mind, probably the most technical person in the division. But Andy was able to wear him out, counter some of the wrestling exchanges, and he was actually able to take Nicky Ryan down, get on his back near the end, which was another big upset. The only thing is, Renato hasn't been as active in the last year or two compared to Tommy. But I'm curious, he has that recent loss, and sometimes you can learn more from a loss and start to bounce back. So he'll know how to approach Tommy's guard for this one and avoid some of those K-guard matrix attacks getting on the back. We'll also see how the wrestling matches up. I think Renato's speed, and he probably has a slight wrestling advantage as well. But Tommy always has some great creative moves from the guard. This is going to be another really fun match, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went quite similar to their first one, which would actually be worth checking out before the event just to see some of the battles and how it'll compare to this match coming up. For the second last first round match then, we have Magid Hage against Owen Flanagan. I always find it funny how anytime someone talks about Owen Flanagan, they say no one can pronounce his name, no one can pronounce his name. It's just Owen, one of the easiest names to pronounce. Has that slightly Irish name as well, so I'm always going to root for him in some way or another. And actually, Owen's someone I've trained with maybe a couple of times throughout the last few years. He's improved so much, and it's great to see him now probably be one of the best competitors in all of Europe. I remember he was there cheering for me when I won the first ADCC trials, and it was really nice support. He was cheering for me a lot, and it kind of helped a lot of the other English and Irish people around to help cheer me on as well. So I always really appreciated that, and I always try and root for him as well, and I like to see him do well. I think he's probably one of the dark horses for this division as well. I know I keep mentioning that there's so many dark horses, but again, I'm just so curious to see how the division plays out, how the matchups go. You don't really know who's going to win which matches, and it could completely make the bracket different as you start to get through it. So in Owen's first match here, he has Magid Hage, someone again who's very unorthodox, clearly very strong with the nickname Gorilla Hands. And as he's always saying, no one's going to have more fun than him in the tournament. But I think it's a tricky matchup for Magid. The ways to win for him, he's going to have to avoid Owen's leg locks and avoid his sticky grips. So I think he's going to have to use the 3-5 minute rounds to his advantage and stay moving the whole time. Side to side, try a pass, try jump on a submission, try another pass, try jump on a submission. And if Owen's able to get on top, Magid is going to have to try and keep it dynamic, get underneath or get back up and try and get back up on top again himself. Try and wear Owen out, try and keep the pace nice and high, because if he starts to play technical with Owen, gets tangled up in some of his leg entanglements, I think it's going to be a tricky day. So I'm curious to see what kind of leg entanglements Owen uses as well. If I was approaching a match like this where I know I have a clear leg lock advantage, I'd probably look to use the 50-50 guard more. It's a bit more even in a leg lock exchange sense, but it's easier to hold on to the person. Then when someone is a bit closer to your level, you need to be a bit more cautious defensively. That's when things like saddle or some other crisscross type leg entanglements will work best. So I think we'll see Owen come out nice and relaxed. He's not going to want to use a ton of energy in the first match, or especially the first round of the first match. He's going to come out nice and relaxed, let Magid use a bit of extra energy in the first round, try and tangle him up in some leg lock exchange, and I think we'll either see a 50-50 heel hook or something like an outside heel hook after passing the leg across from the saddle. I think that would be the best bet for this match. But don't count Magid out either. If he can keep with a good movement-based strategy, try and get on the head, try and jump on some arm locks and get to good positions from there, he also has some good surprises in him. So another very interesting matchup there. Last matchup in the first round then, everyone's most hyped match for the opening round of the tournament, Nicky Ryan against Andrew Tackett. Two of the favourites, to be honest. I think when they did the polls online to judge the 1 to 4 seeds, Nicky was voted number 4 and Andrew was voted number 5, and they end up going together in the first round. So it's a bit unlucky in that sense, but it's a very interesting matchup. I saw a lot of people commenting saying how Nicky was unlucky that he got a tough matchup in the first round, which is true, but it seems like people are actually underestimating almost how good Nicky Ryan is. Everyone knows he's probably going to be the most technical person in the division, but I think the 3 5-minute rounds will actually suit him quite a bit. And we'll know how this match is going to go based on the first 2 or 3 minutes, I think, and how much energy Nicky is using. So we saw at the last ADCC, he came out very aggressive, lots of collar ties, and basically tired himself out without doing too much with it. Hopefully he's learned a lot from then. And it's not necessarily get your cardio doubled, because he's never going to have the cardio of someone like a Ruotolo. But if he can get his efficiency doubled, I think he'll have a lot of success, especially in the 3 5-minute rounds again. So if Nicky comes out with a slow pace, being ready to either counter Andrew's takedowns or get into deep takedowns of his own, I think then he'll be able to get on top. And if he gets on top, that's where we've seen Nicky is very good at controlling the pace. He got Dante down, nice deep double leg straight into a body lock. And again, this is when Nicky's best, when he can control you, use his isometric strength, slow down the pace, and then start to work from there. It's going to be another interesting matchup because Andrew probably wants the opposite. He wants to start drawing Nicky into a war. He's going to start pulling on the head, hoping that Nicky will start doing the same. Start getting into wrestling scrambles, feinting, shooting. So we'll see if Nicky's biting on all of those feints and movements and getting drawn into the war, that's going to suit Andrew. If Nicky can stay calm, be ready to counter, use his energy more efficiently, and when he gets close, then he can turn on the isometric hydraulics and start to use the more technical aspects of his game. So we'll see how this one plays out. If Nicky can stay disciplined with that over at least the first 2 rounds and avoid getting his back taken in the 3rd round, I think we could really see Nicky win. And if he wins this first match, we could see him the whole way in the final. This first match now is going to be a big one for Nicky, because if he loses, everyone say, oh, not again. Nicky tired himself out. He's so good, but he wasn't able to do it in the competition, which is a bit unfair when you're always competing against the best people in the world. But if he wins this first match, I could actually see him winning the whole tournament. So it's going to be, I'm really curious now to see how the training has been. The one concern that I do have is that he's overtrained himself a bit. We've seen in some of the recent B-Team videos, he's doing a lot of scrappy training with people his own level, slipping and sliding around. His knee is buckling. He's looking for the bin to be throwing up in the bin. I don't know if in other sports, let's say that are an Olympic high-level sports with great coaches, they're going to be training their athlete like that close to a competition. Okay, and I know the Tacketts probably have a bit of a smarter approach. They have that cardio base, so they don't need to be making themselves throw up in the bin in a big rush to try and get ready for the competition next month. So hopefully Nicky doesn't get drawn into the war. We have a nice technical match and we'll see how it goes. But again, I think a lot of people are favouring Andrew Tackett in this one because he's so active. Okay, if he can avoid the leg locks as well, which we've seen he's very good at avoiding, it's going to be a very interesting match. The last thing I'll say on this match actually is I'm curious to see how Nicky does his move selection. So we've seen Andrew's very good at defending heel hooks, very slippy, very active, and very scrappy. So I'd like to see Nicky try and do some more straight joint locks. Like we've seen Andrew get caught in knee bars, different things like this. We've seen Nicky have good success recently with straight ankle lock against JT Torres. Sometimes the straight locks actually have much more controllability compared to the heel hooks. Heel hook, very powerful, you can catch it very quickly. But against people who are very scrappy, very scrambly, sweaty, and very movement-based style, they can be a lot harder. So again, I'm curious to see what kind of move selection Nicky does when he gets in close to some different submissions. So that rounds out the first round matchups for the under 80 kilo division. Some really interesting ones there. Over in Ireland, it starts very late at the weekend, but I'm going to have to try and stay up, watch all the matches. There's definitely be lots of learning to be doing, some interesting movements to see. It's very hard to call and pick who's going to be in the semi-finals and the finals. If I had a gun to my head, if I had to put my life savings on it, I would have to go with Ruotolo against Jozef Chen in the first side of the bracket. And then on the other side of the bracket, very difficult to call. You have people like Nicky Ryan, Ona Flanagan, who have a chance to win the whole competition, a very legit chance. But if I had to put money on the semi-finals from that side, I'd have to go with Cade Ruotolo and also Andrew Tackett. Okay, but again, some of those matches are 51-49. Okay, and Andrew against Ona Flanagan is another match I'd really like to see that would be tough to call. So again, I could see a world where Nicky Ryan wins the whole division, Ona Flanagan wins the whole division. They're some of the biggest dark horses, along with Tommy Langaker as well, I think. But if I had to put my money on it, I would go with Ty against Jozef and Cade against Andrew Tackett. I know some people would be surprised I'm not picking Hulk or Matheus Diniz. They're people, again, that could meet in the final, could win the whole division. A lot of people are picking them, especially some of the higher level Brazilians I see choosing their picks. They're going with either of those guys. But for me, I'm just unsure of how their style will translate to the lower weight class. Sometimes it's a lot more difficult than you expect when you bring your weight down and go against guys that are used to very fast pace, very scrappy matches, and they're long 15-minute matches. Even though there's 3 breaks, don't underestimate how long 15 minutes is. You might get to the end of that minute break, you might realize your legs are tired, you might be dying for another minute break, and now some 76, 78 kilo grappler is just running at you, keeping a very high pace. So that's the reason I didn't go with either Hulk or Diniz for the final or the semi-finals, just because I'm unsure how their, let's say, big man or control wrestling-y style will translate to the lower weight classes. So let me know in the comments what you think, who you think will be the semi-final matchups, who you think will be the final matchups. I would love to see the two Ruotolos in the final. I think they're fantastic. They're very creative, great styles, and it's cool seeing videos of them doing jiu-jitsu together when they're 3 years old. It would be nice them coming a long way, having a scrap in the final and sharing the million. But again, there's so many people in this division that I know quite well, I've trained with, so I hope everyone has a great performance. I hope everyone's happy with it. And at the minimum, they'll all be getting $10,001, some good exposure, some good experience. And to be honest, the bracket is so stacked, anyone could win. So I'm really looking forward to see how the division plays out. So let me know what you think below. Share this with anyone you think would enjoy it, someone who's looking forward to CJI this weekend, who would like to have a bit of insight into some of the interesting battles that will be going on. And stay tuned for the next video going over the over 80 kilo division, which is slightly less stacked, but still some great matchups coming. So yeah, looking forward to CJI this weekend, and I'll see everyone soon.